Well, James Morrow, welcome back to Fast Forward.
Thank you. I'm glad to have returned to
Yeah.
your wonderful show. And
And,
thanks for the coffee mug.
oh, sure, sure. You were one of the first on your block. Now, the last time we had you on, you were finishing up, you had finished already your Godhead trilogy, which was an amazing set of books. And now you have a new novel coming out called The Last Witchfinder.
Yeah, the Last Witchfinder is not explicitly about the supreme being. In the Godhead trilogy, I kill our creator off, but for sound sort of philosophical reasons, and then I put him on trial for crimes against humanity. And then there's the third volume of the trilogy involves the one remnant of God, the gigantic skull going into geosynchronous orbit above Times Square, that genre, to make a final commentary on our relationship to our theistic constructs. But The Last Witchfinder is ostensibly straight historical fiction using the fact of witch persecutions as an entree into the whole problem of the shift, the astonishing rotation that occurs as we move from the Renaissance to what we now call the Enlightenment. That rotation just in the way people constructed reality, the way they understood the physical universe, shedding the Renaissance worldview with its mysticism and theism, and suddenly we have the Age of Reason. And what fascinated me, Mike, is that those two worlds overlap. We maybe think of witch persecutions as a kind of primitive order of human credulity. We might associate it with the Middle Ages or even the Dark Ages. But no, belief in witches is virtually modern. It's there right on the cusp of the arrival of modernity. And that absolutely fascinated me as a subject for a novel, to imagine that people were living through this astonishing paradigm shift, you might call it. And I figured that a woman born around 1678 would have moved from the demon-driven universe into the universe of Benjamin Franklin.
Right, and Isaac Newton.
And Isaac Newton, yes, who are
Both characters.
who become characters in the novel.
And it's also interesting because near the beginning of the novel, they're actually using the scientific methodology to try to help prove witchcraft without having to go through all the messiness of the what is it, the Malleum Maleficarum?
The Malleus Maleficarum. Yeah,
Yes.
that was the witch finder's Bible, as it were, the manual for witch hunters. That going back to really the 1400s. But yeah, what is so fascinating, and the reason I knew there was a novel in this is the overlap. In other words, detecting witches was pretty much continuous with other rational things that one did. It was never seen as the opposite of science, and belief in witches was simply another way to do natural philosophy, which was the term that they used for what we now call science. Many members of the Royal Society were sort of armchair demonologists. Robert Boyle, the famous Robert Boyle of Boyle's Law of gases, thought that a particular case in France, le Démon de Macron, pretty much cinched it. There must be something to the demon hypothesis. And the methods of detecting witches were very rational. Well, you knew that the witch had this intimate relationship with Satan. He probably left some kind of mark or brand to indicate that you were in his coven. And so you stripped the witch naked, the suspect, and you looked for some kind of blemish that might be a devil's mark, or in the case of a woman, this blemish might actually erupt into a teat via which she would suckle her familiar, some kind of pet with which Lucifer had blessed her. It was known that witches weigh less than other people, like maybe their bones are hollow or there's less substance to their flesh, hence their ability to fly, to transvect themselves. So if you put a witch on a like a huge granary scale, you'll find that she weighs less than other people. In fact, she weighs so much less that she can't send a Bible shooting skyward. Of course, there was the test called swimming the witch. The idea there being that water would reject a creature who's not fit to be baptized, to be christened, only with excrement. So you tie the witch up. For decency's sake, you put a kind of tow rope on her, throw her in the water, and if she sinks, she's innocent. Okay. Now they lost some innocent people that way. Of course, they were all innocent in my view, but they did have a rope to try to pull them out before drowning.
Now the main character in the book is Janet Stearns.
Mm-hmm.
She starts as a young prepubescent girl in the book and grows and travels and makes it her life's work in a sense to try to eliminate the witchfinders.
Yeah, that's the plot. And it's usually a good idea to put a plot in a novel.
Very clever.
She starts out herself as a believer. Her father is actually the son of an historical witchfinder, a guy named John Stern, who was the partner of the most famous of all of the English witchfinders, Matthew Hopkins. But a letter arrives in her life from Isaac Newton, in which Newton expresses skepticism about demons. And her beloved aunt takes a particular interest in this. And her aunt is instructing her in natural philosophy, and they do experiments together involving Galileo's theory of uniform acceleration and so on. And then when the aunt is accused of witchcraft and arrested and ultimately executed, Janet's worldview undergoes this 360-degree turn, and she becomes a crusader against these conjuring statutes which legitimized the persecution and execution of witches. And she thinks there's a disproof of demons buried in Newton's Principia Mathematica. So she tries to understand this book. This great work of science, and her adventures take her to the American colonies. She gets involved in the Salem witch trials. She becomes one of Benjamin Franklin's lovers. The novel, sort of en passant, explains Franklin's lifelong appreciation for older women. He wrote a very amusing essay called "On the Choice of a Mistress," and how if you want to acquire a mistress at some point in your life, choose an older woman. They know so much more of the world. They're much more interesting conversationalists.
Now you brought up the Principia.
Mm-hmm.
On the face of it, this sounds like a nice, straightforward historical novel,
mm-hmm.
but you kind of threw a little twist into it, because you have the book itself claims to have been written by another book.
Exactly. Yeah. This is a universe, and this is the science fictional element of The Last Witchfinder. This is a universe in which books are conscious entities. They have souls. They have agendas. They write other books. And so in sort of the prologue, we learn that the author of The Last Witchfinder is Newton's Principia Mathematica. And this enables me to periodically interrupt the flow of the conventional historical chronicle with contemporary commentary by the Principia, because I wanted to celebrate the birth of science, but at the same time to acknowledge that there are many trade-offs involved in our having become a society driven by technology and sort of keyed to the scientific understanding of the universe. So through that conceit, the Principia is free to flash us forward to the French Revolution, Because there's the quintessential example of the problem with carrying reason almost into the realm itself of deification. So that, one understanding of the French Revolution is that it was kind of religion by other means. It was a religion of Enlightenment science, the secular, but it was disconnected from decency or any kind of spiritual connection among the people. And then when Janet gets involved in the Salem witch trials, partly because she's still a child, but her father is schlepping her around, and he's still a pricker, as they called the witchfinders. That's how you knew for sure that one of these teats or these devil's blemishes was demonic. You pricked it with a needle; it would not bleed. Hence the expression "cold as a witch's tit," in case you were wondering where that locution came from. When we go to the Salem witch trials, the Principia then flashes us forward to what Salem is like today. As you may know, it's become the Halloween capital of the world. And the Principia has great fun sort of satirizing the way that the town has trivialized its tragic history, and now it's like the occasion for costume balls and the official Cat of Salem contest.
It's one of the things in the kind of interludes where the book is talking is it's a place for the kind of James Morrow humor.
Yeah,
to come out. And,
I was able to be at my most outrageous and audacious. Although I'll tell you, Mike, this was such a wonderful kind of adventure to attempt the medium of historical fiction. It was daunting, particularly writing in this era, sort of Restoration England, early colonial America, because you have to get the sound of the language right, the diction. It's if you write a novel set in Imperial Rome, well, they're speaking Latin, and so you just have them speak maybe like really good English as the equivalent of that. But I had to fuss until the very end, until the final sort of proofreading gesture. When would they use the word "thee" versus "ye," and wouldn't they use the word "ere" instead of "before," and so on? So I read a lot of contemporary documents. It almost seemed to me that the book was asking to be written. You sit down to write an historical novel, and there are these astonishing events sort of sitting out there like diamonds in a field, waiting for you to come along and thread them together in a necklace, And I had, when I embarked on the project, I had no idea, for example, that Franklin and Newton almost met in 1725. We think of them as belonging to different worlds, different generations, which they were, but Newton's still alive in 1725, and Franklin has gone to London as a young man. He's only 18 to buy some printing equipment. And he has a kind of letter of introduction from a physician named Pemberton. But Newton didn't want to meet this cheeky kid from Philadelphia. But in my novel, they really do meet. I was able to have them. Was able to allow my Ben an audience with Isaac Newton. Turns out they have nothing to say to each other because they really are from two different universes. And Newton, at that point in his life, he doesn't want to talk about the Principia Mathematica. He's into catching counterfeiters. He was running the British Mint at the time. So he just wants to chase after counterfeiters and talk about his works of biblical prophecy. And Franklin, wants to talk about electricity. So that also made for a kind of James Morrow
yes.
comedic scene. And there were just other actual events that played into my hands. When my heroine needed to get captured by Indians, taken off to an Algonquin village and made to perform that role for about 10 years in her life, it so happens that the Puritan town of Haverhill was raided by Algonquin Indians around almost the exact year that I needed that to happen. Because I needed my heroine to be out of commission for a while so that Ben Franklin could get born and grow up, and then they could become lovers. Because I wanted, I just had to use Newton and Franklin as sort of the symbols of this this shift from the Renaissance to the Enlightenment.
It's an amazing book. Now, did you know you were going to have this whole book about books going on from the beginning of it, or was that part of your initial plan, or did that kind of grow
No,
with the book?
good question. No, that's the other fact that makes me like in novel writing to setting sail, destination unknown, or like jumping on a freight train and you don't know where you're going to end up. I knew that I wanted to allow for the critique of science and the Enlightenment. I didn't want to just make it a simplistic story about, oh, well, there once were a bunch of superstitious people, and then the Baron de Montesquieu came along, or then Voltaire came along and set them straight. I didn't want to tell, that's kind of stacking the deck. But so I had Janet's aunt, the one who kicks off the plot by getting executed for sorcery and then sort of deputizing her niece to, you've got to destroy this law, this evil law.
Yeah, that's a pretty harrowing scene.
Yeah, it was hard to write, and the very law that empowered the Salem witch court and so on. It just has to be struck down. I have her deciding that. I'm sorry, I forgot the question.
Was about when you came up with having a book about books.
Yeah. That initially the aunt was going to have written a kind of visionary poem in which she foresees the misuse of science, the French Revolution. The aunt has this kind of mystical experience and writes it out as this sort of Blakean poem. And I thought, well, that's a way to show that I, the author, am aware of the critique of science. And that didn't satisfy me, and that was a little too supernatural for James Morrow, the secular humanist. So I figured, okay, I'll do something very weird and science fiction. I'll imagine that this is not exactly our universe. It's straightforward historical fiction, but the Principia is conscious. And I like to think that it invites us to look at our libraries and imagine that these books love us almost as much as we love them.
And it's a delightful book. We've run out of time, unfortunately. Got so much more I would want to talk to you about.
Okay.
But thank you so much for being here. We'll have you on again.
Let's do it again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
thank you.
Thank you. And from all of us here at Fast Forward, this is Mike Zipser saying, take care.